So, in my mind, I'm willing to accept that risk, and it's more than worth it for me to stand up based on my convictions and principles for what I believe in and what I think is the right thing for a person or a politician to do.
What about your constituents? I see a few comments on your blog from your constituents that disagreed with you. What do you say to them?
To them, I don't ask that they like what I'm saying or that they even like what Mr. LeBlanc is saying or has said. I'm just asking for people to be respectful of the idea that civil liberties empower people to say things that sometimes we don't like, but it's very important to be able to say them. And when people do say things that we don't like and people do challenge us on what we say, we need to deal with that through civil channels. Civility might mean going to court through a civil battle, but civility can also mean sitting down over a cup of coffee and talking about what it is.
Do you think it's time for that in this case?
Absolutely. I have a huge problem with taking the responsibility away from the individuals who should be empowered to negotiate and resolve this conflict amongst themselves, and handing that off to the state, especially a state that's been criticized quite heavily by the individual in question, and hand it off to a state who's controlling the investigation on this individual. That's worrisome. I think that everybody that raises flags against what they see should be worried about this type of behavior, because there's nothing that prevents anybody else from being called out on this. Sure, Charles knows that I think he's a nuisance and has been for some time, but he's an important part of what we have here in Fredericton. He was the person who beat the drum on the MLA pensions. He was the person who beats the drum on ADHD. He has a lot of things that have garnered a lot of attention because he's been persistent and dynamic in how he presents things. And whether you like or don't like what he says, that's not the point here. The point is how we deal with these types of things, and whether we're a society that is so afraid of being offended and so afraid of having to stand up for yourself or negotiate or make a statement that we just turn it over and we say it's better for the government to rule against all these things, and maybe even it's okay for the government to make rules that capture unintentionally things that would have never been called into question in the first place. That's the chilling effect that I referenced.
My arm's killing me.
Do you think it's time to have Do you think it's time to have a citizen body to investigate cops? Private citizen, not cops investigating cops?
I don't know. I think it's time to look at a lot of the laws we have and see where we're spending our resources and what we're pursuing. Sometimes I don't think that the channels are as bad as the laws. And just because there's a law, it doesn't mean it's just, and it doesn't mean that it protects people the way it should.
Like riding a bicycle with no helmet. That's what this all started, you know. In Ontario, it's 21 years and older.
Well, it started because you're loud and obnoxious. That's how it started. I don't think anybody should ever lose sight of that. That's why this is happening. And you have to accept that you did call a lot of this on yourself. And the people that aren't sympathizing with you do so because you're a troublemaker. But that's the way it is.
You know what? That was so well said, we'll leave it at that.